About a 1 hour surgery.
Okay, hey, good morning. It's just after 10:30, and I would like to open this up. You are part of the Subcommittee on Agriculture Appropriations this morning. Welcome all. Everyone have a card in that would like to have one in? Any special order you'd like us to call you? Just one at a time. But before we do that, we have some business that we have to take care of. And Mr. Clerk, would you call roll, please?
Representative Coughlin.
Present.
Representative Forleen.
Here.
Representative Jenkins.
Here.
Representative Annick.
He told me he'd be here, so.
Well, we do have a quorum, 3 to 4 members, and we'll check him off when he comes in.
Wonderful.
And we have minutes.
Okay, we have minutes from last week. Everyone read those? Thank you. Support? Support. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good. Passes. Here we go. Okay. And I'd like to invite Mr. Richard Powers to come up, please. The Horse Breeders Benevolent and Protective Association? Protection.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Yeah, good morning, Richard.
My name is Rich Powers. I'm representing the Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association. I'm on the board of directors, and I'm also the chair of our legislative committee. The Horsemen's Benevolent and Protective Association represents the interests of thoroughbred owners and trainers in Michigan. We have over 500 members. We negotiate contracts with racetracks for live racing, work with the licensed racetrack in putting on a live race meet, work to assure that there is an adequate supply of horses for the live race meet, monitor and work to improve conditions at racetracks to protect people and horses, and protect the financial interests of people participating in live horse racing. The HBPA also provides benevolence, as our name suggests, which is a dental program that we have that covers the owners, trainers, and workers on the backside of the track. And we also provide assistance for medical and funeral expenses when there's a specific need among the horsemen. Horse racing has been an important part of the agricultural industry in Michigan. The latest study in 2002 by public sector consultants entitled Horse Racing in Michigan, an Economic Impact Study, found that there was $443 million annually generated in total economic activity, greater than $23 million in state revenue from taxes on racing and associated activity, and total employment related to horse racing of greater than 26,000. Now, since then, the industry obviously has been in decline, and these numbers aren't nearly what they were then, but the industry is still an important part of Michigan agriculture. The horse racing industry is an important market for Michigan agricultural products such as hay, straw, and grain. In addition, there are many other businesses that benefit from horse racing and breeding industry. For example, veterinarians, farriers, feed and supply stores, grain elevators, lumber yards, vehicle dealers, and hardware stores. Some of the issues facing racing in Michigan include the state of our economy in both the United States and Michigan. The horse racing industry is dependent on wagering on horse races, both live and simulcast, and obviously when the economy is down, people don't have the discretionary income to wager on horse races. Also, competition for wagering dollars from casinos, and the fact that surrounding states are either have or are going to get casinos at racetracks, which provide a significant boost to the purses for racing at those racetracks. Just as an example, in Indiana, what we call a maiden special weight race, which is the first race, the highest tier for a horse that hasn't won yet. In Indiana, that race has a $40,000 purse. In Michigan, the same race has a $12,000 purse. So you can see there's a significant difference there. The results of these adverse impacts include racetracks are closing in Michigan, Purses for races are down. The purses for races are dependent on wagering on live and simulcast racing. The Michigan racehorse breeding industry is declining. Horse trainers, breeders, and owners are moving out of state, particularly moving to the surrounding states because the purses are so much better and people go where the money is. The number of jobs is declining, and the economic activity associated with horse racing and breeding has decreased. Despite the current state of affairs, there is still hope. What we really need in Michigan to compete for the long term are casinos at racetracks. Now, I know there are a number of difficulties with that, and that's why I say for the long term. But just as an example, Indiana has shown how the racing industry can be turned around in the state. A study they did down there, pre-casino total economic activity related to racing was less than $200 million. Post-casinos at racetracks in Indiana, the total economic activity exceeded $1 billion, a significant increase. Casinos at racetracks also pay high initial licensing fees in the hundreds of millions of dollars generally, and high tax rates contributing to hundreds of millions of dollars to the state tax coffers. What we can do in the short term would include pass legislation such as that proposed by Representative Denby in House Bill 4849 to fund the Michigan Gaming Control Board horse racing regulatory activities out of the Casino State Services Fee Fund. This would relieve some pressure on the Agriculture Equine Industry Development Fund, which provides incentives for Michigan-bred racehorses and breeders. Consider approving other types of pari-mutuel wagering. Some examples would include advanced deposit account wagering. This is either wagering by telephone or electronically. Basically, a person applies to one of these account wagering firms and sets up an account, and then they can then wager on horse races essentially anywhere in the country. This is already taking place in Michigan, despite the fact that there's no legal authorization to do so. There are no state controls over things like underage or compulsive gambling. No taxes to the state, no money to the horsemen or tracks. And this is the one growth area in wagering that is available right now. A second idea would be instant racing. This is machines where people can wager on historic horse races. Another approach would be off-track wagering at sports bars, similar to the lottery's Keno approach. And there are other types of things that could also be done on pari-mutuel wagering type of approach. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions? Yes.
I do. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the tracks pay high tax rates. What are the taxes you pay that we're talking about? And then on the flip side, you're saying that 4849 would provide money to the tracks. So I'm trying to get you're paying a lot of taxes, but then you're looking for tax money to come back.
No, what I was referring to in the high taxes is in other states where they have casinos at racetracks. There's generally a very high fee of $100 million or $150 million for the initial license, and then there's a pretty high tax rate that goes along with it too, 30 to 40 or 50% tax. And that money goes to the state. So, but that's in the other states like Indiana, Florida, where they have casinos at racetracks.
Okay, but that's not true here in Michigan.
No.
Okay.
No, we don't have casinos at racetracks, so.
Well, all right, no, I was just saying the high tax rates. I thought you were referring to what you're paying here in the state. I was
referring to other states that, you know, that's a source of money to their tax coffers, significant source. What was your second question?
Well, it was related to the first one. I guess in the same breath, you were saying I thought you were saying you're paying high tax rates, and then you were looking for more tax revenue through another bill. And I'm thinking, boy, we're just taking money from you and then we're giving it back. So I misunderstood the first part.
No, the second part was replacing the what the Michigan Gaming Control Board expends for regulation over horse racing currently comes out of the Ag Equine Industry Development Fund, and that money traditionally has gone to provide incentives to owners and breeders to race Michigan horses. And if that could be replaced by the casino fund, then it would free up more money to provide incentives to Michigan owners and breeders of racehorses.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question on how the casino would work at a racetrack, because it seems like those would be two different things. You'd have the race going, and then a casino is, you know, like at Mount Pleasant, that's totally unrelated. I mean, how would that all tie together, that it would need to, you know, work? How would that work together, I guess, is what my question is.
I think all the states do it a little bit differently, but generally it's all in the same building, and they have one area, oftentimes overlooking the racetrack, that has the casino portion of it in with whatever table games or video lottery terminals or whatever they have in there. And that operates year-round, the casino portion. And then the horse racing is for a specific number of days during one time of the year generally. So, you know, like at Mount Pleasant, it's between, well, this year was July to end of October. But the casino would be operating full-time. The benefit to the horse racing industry, well, there should be two benefits. One is just purely in purses, because a percentage of whatever the gross take is generally goes to the horsemen's purses, so that boosts the purses up. That's why the Indiana purses are so much higher than ours, because they put a percentage of the casino gambling into purses for the horse racing. The second thing that hasn't probably worked as well as a lot of people thought it would, but would be something to encourage people to come out to the tracks and then get interested in horse racing and bet more on the horse racing as well while they're there. You know, frankly, a lot of the people at the tracks and who are betting on horse racing are older people now, and it's been difficult to encourage the younger people to come out and watch horse racing. And I think the thought is, and I think it's a good thought, and I agree with it, if you get out and watch a race, it's pretty exciting, and maybe you get interested in it and become more of a fan of horse racing and bet more money. The difficulty, I think, is it's easy to push the button on a machine and have the numbers spin around and see whether you're a winner or not. It's a little more difficult with a horse race and trying to handicap it and figure out which of the 7 or 8 or 10 horses in the race may win the race and the one that you want to bet on. So it takes some time. You got to get people interested in it first, and then they have to learn how to handicap and bet. So it's a little more difficult, but I really think in the long term it's a lot more rewarding than just sitting there and pushing the button. But that's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here first. And
welcome.
When you talk about promotion of the industry, which I believe is supposed to be done through the Department of Agriculture in some form anyway, would there be a potential maybe for Pure Michigan? I mean, I think we have a number of, you know, racetracks in the state. Would that be some avenue where we maybe could promote the industry?
Sure, I think that's a great idea. Unfortunately, there's been very little promotion in the industry. You know, probably a lot of people don't even realize there's thoroughbred horse racing in Michigan. And there's several reasons for that, I think. I mean, when money's scarce, the tracks are having financial problems, the horsemen are having financial problems. It's hard to come up with money to promote. But if you don't promote, then in the long run, the industry continues to decline. So I think that idea is a great idea. We can look into it and see if there's some interest there. You know, and it would help promoting the Michigan promotion program, I think, is, you know, horses racing on a screen are pretty flashy, so if they could incorporate that into some of their ads that they run, be a great idea.
Thank you, Rich, very much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to call up Rick McCord from the Michigan Thoroughbred Breeders Association.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to me. We have contributed to the state of Michigan in many ways over the years. Pasture land, hay fields, taxes. We put $10 million out of the Ag Equine Development Fund into putting up the Silver Dome to the tune of $1 million a year. The roof blew off of it twice. We fixed the roof twice for a total of $1.5 million a year. The state of Michigan found a TB problem in their deer herd. That cost the Ag Equine Development Fund $6.2 million. Horses do not get TB, according to Frank Nichols from Michigan State. It don't happen, but yet we have to pay the bills. We used to support the 4-H fairs. There was a lot of benefits that come out of the Ag Equine Development Fund to the state of Michigan. Right now, running in Michigan, 20 days in the last fiscal year, we had 70 winners in-state. We had 240 out-of-state. Now, there was some concern in front of the Senate last week that we would like to be able to pay some of these breeders' awards to the horses that won out-of-state. The concern of the Senate was that there would be some of this money being paid to people that was not residents of the state of Michigan. Right now, in the breeders' roster, there's 2 people that are not residents of Michigan. There's one out of Georgia, Elkhorn Stables. There's one out of Kentucky, Roe Parle. 99% of this money I'm talking about will come back into Michigan people. Mr. Parle and our Elkhorn Stables have sent, I've had horses that belong to both of these factions at my farm, and when they do come into our state to breed here, they generate revenue in our state. I get paid to keep their horses, we get paid to breed them. They might make 10 cents on a dollar by putting their money into, by the Michigan Bred Breeders' Awards. If we could do this, it would help me pay my taxes that I owe to the state of Michigan. Right now, with 20 days of racing, our income has went all to pieces. That's just not there. My wife asked me this morning how I'm going to pay for the field of hay that I cut yesterday, and I don't know. I guess I'll have to sell the hay. We need to be able to use pari-mutuel things and like instant racing and advanced deposit wagering. That would be a benefit to us in some ways. It would help us monetarily. We'd love to have some casinos on our racetracks so we could compete for the gaming dollar in a fair manner. The casinos right now, what do we have, 23 in the state? And they're pretty hard on us when we ask for something. I think competition's a good thing in any state. And I'm not afraid of competing with them. I'd just like to have the choice to compete with them. And I'll answer any questions I can.
Mr. Chairman, a question. You said earlier the Silver Dome, you brought up the Silver Dome and how your group funded.
There was $1 million a year taken out of the Ag Equine Development Fund for 10 years, sir.
For what reason?
To help pay the bill to build the Pontiac Silverdome. To that point, I questioned the people at the Pontiac Silverdome about putting a horse sale in their facility, and that got turned down. We could pay for it, but we couldn't play there. When they sold the Pontiac Silverdome, I don't think we got a whole lot out of that, but we helped build it.
Rick, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to
You
me.
bet. Thanks for coming down this morning and for your testimony.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call Brett Boyd from the Michigan Harness Horsemen's Association.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm truly honored for this opportunity to talk about the business, the family industry of horse racing. My name is Brett Boyd. I'm president of the Michigan Harness Horsemen's Association, but I testify today on behalf of 12,000 jobs that call horse racing their way of life in Michigan. There are many reasons why we're in the predicament that we're in today. We are here today asking for your assistance because we have a very valuable industry for the state of Michigan. And you know, the Lansing has traditionally had a very good interest in racing. 71 years ago, they approved parimutuel racing at our state's tracks. And in 1995, they approved the racing law of 1995, which allowed us to collect wagers on simulcast events, horse racing, all around the country. Since then, and in 1995, it created what you folks have heard this morning, the Ag Equine Fund. The Ag Equine Fund was created by the legislature to create incentives to breed, raise, and race horses in the state of Michigan. It was a absolutely awesome economic engine for the state. But the playing field has changed dramatically in the last few years. Our Ag Equine Fund, as Mr. Powers referred to, at one point in time was about $20 million a year. And for several times, money was taken out of that Ag Equine Fund to fund other ventures, other interests. But that Ag Equine Fund, which at one point in time was at $20 million, we are looking at about $4 million. This is from the Department of Ag, and Cinda's in attendance today. About $4 million in revenue next year. Quite honestly, we can't compete. And why are the reasons that we've seen that decline? And not to go against Mr. Powers, but quite honestly, our racetracks have done a phenomenal job of attracting young families and young folks to the track as a inexpensive entertainment. We're seeing more and more young people. We just concluded our meet at Hazel Park with a substantial increase in attendance. We just started our Northville meet with an increase in attendance as well. But why are we in this predicament? We're in this predicament because there isn't a level playing field. Last week I had the opportunity to sit down with my state representative, Ken Kurtz, also my senator, Bruce Caswell, and Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley. And I tried to simplify our situation. And I put it like this. Imagine a farmer that was a hay farmer, and he produced hay. What we're in is we're in an agriculturally based business, just like a hay farmer. But a few years back, the most wealthy hay farmer in the state created legislation called Proposal 1, which said we cannot use modern technology or enhance our business with any kinds of changes without a vote, a statewide and local referendum. So the most wealthiest farmer in the state, the most wealthiest hay farmer, creates legislation that handcuffs our industry. Now, we've had several efforts over the years to put together ballot proposals, to come up with different ways to change our business model, to survive. But every single time we try to create legislation or create a ballot initiative, we have to fight the most wealthy, so be it, hay farmers in the state. Just to simplify it, we are in a situation where we absolutely cannot win without your help. And I greatly, greatly thank you for your support of House Bill 4849. We're in a situation with $4 million in revenue. There is priority to our Gaming Control Board and state laboratory, which we absolutely need to ensure the integrity of our business. But we're looking at about 2.4 million in expenditures for those two, the laboratory, technology, and the Gaming Control Board. We have $4 million in revenue. That leaves approximately $1.5 million between both breeds to race for, to create incentives. basically, our industry is in this position because we have basically been handcuffed and not able to fight on a level playing field. We are a fantastic industry for Michigan. We have family farms, second, third, centennial farms in every single county. We have licensed horsemen in all 83 counties. We've long been the fabric and history of Michigan. We paid billions and billions of dollars in taxes, and we just have not been allowed to compete. We have 12,000 jobs, and we say that strongly. When you consider how racing affects so many industries, trucks, trailers, insurance, veterinarians, you name it, right down to the farmer, hay, grain, oats. We are a significant impact, about 12,000 jobs and about $750 million in economic impact, but we're going to disappear. I thank you for this opportunity to talk to you because, quite honestly, we're coming to the finish line, and we need your help. We're good Michigan families that have been here for years and generations, and we're absolutely not allowed to fight a fair fight. We have increased attendance. We've done a better job. Why is horse racing going to disappear in Michigan? It is not because we don't have the best horsemen, the best farms, and produce the best horses in Michigan. It's because we are in a David versus Goliath situation, and we're not allowed to have the tools to compete. To draw the comparison back to that hay farmer, we're not allowed to use the latest and greatest technology. We're not allowed to use the tractors to farm our land. We are dealing with old technology while the whole world has changed and business has changed. We are not allowed to change our business to allow instant racing, to allow casinos at our racetracks, to allow parimutuel games at our facilities to compete. You know, oftentimes they say that the horsemen of the state aren't on the same page. We are. We're trying to survive. We've worked together to create legislation, some of which you guys have already endorsed. That $4 million is not the answer, but it'll buy us time. We need the legislature to assist us in changing our business model. We were here before the casinos. There was $3 billion in gaming in this state last year. The state was the winner of about $300 million. You look around the country and you don't have to look far. Indiana, Pennsylvania, New York. The state of Michigan should have been the winner of $1.5 billion, not $300 million. And you know those states like Pennsylvania, New York, Indiana, and soon to be Ohio said we will seize the opportunity to help a racing industry which is good for our state. And we will seize the opportunity to drive additional revenue for our state. We are trying to fight a battle, ladies and gentlemen, with folks that should have paid $1.5 billion in taxes and they paid $300 million. Many of our tribal casinos didn't pay $1, but yet we have to go toe-to-toe in the ring with them. And we were here long before them. We paid billions and billions of dollars of taxes, and we got good, honest, hard-working Michigan taxpayers which have not been given a fair opportunity to compete. You became a House of Representative to help people. These folks deserve your help. We've been here for generations. Last week, when I sat down with our Lieutenant Governor, we've been racing at the Hillsdale County Fair since 1896. It is an absolute part of the history and tradition of that fair. It won't be there next year. For the first time since 1896. And why will it not be there? Without your help? because we can't win the fight without your help. You know, Lieutenant Governor, I thanked him dearly for the opportunity, because we got family farms and people in this state that deserve somebody to step up and say, this can't happen. I said to the Lieutenant Governor, we appreciate anything you and the governor and the legislature can do. He said, you know what, Mr. Boyd? Horse racing is right in our wheelhouse. We talk about gardening in the state of Michigan and preserving Michigan jobs. That's horse racing. We've been here for years. We paid billions in taxes, and we're going to be gone. Every single one of us. I got a family farm built by my father to be used by me and his grandson and his great-grandsons to raise the best horses you could raise and raise them in Michigan. And it's not going to happen without your help. If we were 12,000 jobs under one roof in your county, I guarantee you, you'd go to the end to save those jobs and save that impact. We're not under one roof. We're in all 83 counties. And we go to work every morning. And we need your help. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. The revenue stream is it doesn't take a brain surgeon. And I think you guys saw the Ag Equine Fund last week. It's disappearing. And why is it disappearing? Because we're not allowed to use those advances in technology. Our customers can wager from their computer in their home instead of coming to our racetrack, and the state doesn't get any tax benefit, the horsemen don't get any tax benefit, the racetracks don't get any tax benefit. And racetracks and legislatures all over the country have worked together to drive billions and billions of dollars of economies and taxes for their state. We're fighting 26 casinos with our hands behind our back and $2 in our pocket. And we gotta have your help, and we deserve your help. We can drive revenue for Michigan, additional revenue for Michigan. We had a chance back in, 1996. We had the slots vote. It got through the House, got through the Senate, stalled out in committee. We got run off at the pass. Again. We can't let it happen again. I'm sorry I was long-winded today, but this morning, I said this may be our last chance to tell the story and make an impact on you folks, to carry the message in the House, carry the message in the Senate. These are good people. These are 12,000 jobs, and they're absolutely don't have a fair chance. And I know you guys have, I think all of you, we're a co-sponsor on House Bill 4849. For that, thank you. It's going to be an uphill battle, and it would help us survive. It's not the answer. Long term, it's not. But we appreciate it. And I'll take any of your questions.
Brett, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You speak a strong message. We have received it, and we will carry it.
And I'm sorry I get a little emotional, but we got some great people, and they deserve your attention. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next, I'd like to call up William Gira.
Good morning.
Morning.
Appreciate the time to address you here briefly. I come to you as a farmer. I raise standardbred horses in Michigan. I've been involved in it for the past 25 years. Initially, it was my second career. I'm retired state police. Now it's my primary career. The farm that my wife and I own is a family farm. It was established 45 years ago, 1966. It's 135 acres at this point. Yesterday's count as far as horses on the farm, there's 90 head of horses. We have been a breeding farm where we stood stallions for the last 25 years. Those stallions' offspring were all eligible to race here in Michigan. It currently, on today's date, in the past, say 10 years ago, 90% of the horses on the farm were being bred to race here in Michigan. This morning there's 3 on the farm that are bred here to race in Michigan. The rest are going to Kentucky, to Indiana, to New York, to New Jersey, to Pennsylvania. Virtually every state in the country that has harness racing, these horses are all going out. The people that own it, ourselves and our clients, they pay stud fees to people in other states. That's all money that's leaving. Again, 10 years ago, that money was staying here. Over 25 years of standing stallions at our farm, there's been 8 different horses that have stood there, 8 different stallions. Those 8 stallions bred 1,870 offspring. They had 1,870 babies. Those foals, as they grew and began to race, starting at 2 and on up to age 13, some of them, they earned, 1,870 offspring earned over $70 million. That's just one farm. That's just our farm. That's not the other dozens of farms similar to ours. $70 million is a big number to anybody. And that's just coming from 135 acres. That's where it started, and it got split up between hundreds, probably thousands of different owners that owned those horses. That's just what they won racing at the track. That's not the money they were sold for, resold for. That's just money, the purse money that they made. That's not my number. That's the United States Trotting Association number. They keep track of all the offspring and their earnings. So it comes from an independent source. It's not mine. 10 years ago, our gross earnings on our farm were over $1 million. Last year, falling between $300,000 and $250,000. When we were grossing $1 million, I wasn't making $1 million. I was making, $35,000, $40,000. The rest of it was all going back into the local economy. Tens of thousands of dollars for hay, oats, bedding for the stalls. All that money was going back out in the local economy. Back then we had 10 people working for us full time. We're down to 4 now. We used to be able to pay them health insurance. Can't afford to do that now. So a lot of things have changed. And the reason that all these changes have occurred is, we're a business. We're not independently wealthy. I didn't make enough money in the state police to retire to a life of comfort. So we have to go where the business is. And the business now is in other places. So we can't stand by and just run a farm when we got 3 head of horses that are going to race in Michigan next year. We have to go other places. But that's all an impact on the state. It's just, the money that people used to spend to raise horses and race them in Michigan is now leaving because the horse racing is still a viable industry. It's just not viable in Michigan anymore because of things that everybody here before me has talked about. Back in 1997, we started a horse sale company, my wife and I. And some of you may know the livestock pavilion that's on campus at MSU in the agricultural end of the university. We were one of their first clients to book a weekend to use their facility to put on a horse sale. Over the 13 years that horse sale that we ran it, 1,452 head of horses, yearlings, potential race horses, were sold. They sold for $8.2 million. We collected sales tax, 6% sales tax on the sale of those horses. That was over $492,000 that from one weekend sale of 1,452 horses, the state of Michigan got $492,000 in taxes. There is no horse sale in Michigan this year. And there's always been a standardbred horse sale in this state for probably at least 50 years, probably longer than that. And this year is the first year there is no horse sale because there aren't enough Michigan-bred horses, and we're a prime example. We got 3. We can't rent the university, Michigan State Pavilion to bring up 3 horses and sell them. It just doesn't make sense. So these things are all trickled down from us not being able to compete against the casinos, from Proposal 1 that everybody's talked to you about. I'll survive. I just take my business elsewhere. And that's just the simple fact of the matter. And that's really all I have to bring to you is just this state service fee money, this House bill that's been introduced. As Brett has indicated, it's not going to fix the problem, but it'll certainly stop the bleeding for a time when people can have a sense that there's a future in Michigan again. Because horse breeding you're all about tomorrow. What we breed, this coming winter won't get to a racetrack for 3 years. So you can't expect people to invest in something when they know they got to wait 3 years before they know the fruits of their investment, when there's an environment that is in such decline. It's just unrealistic. People just aren't going to do it. Not when there's areas where it's very lucrative. I mean, I came from Lexington yesterday. I'm going back to tomorrow to race. And then I go to Indiana after that. And we just have a small 3-horse stable. But that's happening everywhere. We've had dozens and dozens of drivers and trainers go to Canada and all the other states that were mentioned, just because they have to make a living and they have to provide for their families. And even though they all love Michigan and all started here and grew up here, they have to go where they have to go. And if things turn around, many of them will come back. But unless we get this help, it's just a short matter of time, and there won't be any. Like I said, we got 3, and next year there probably won't be 3. There'll probably be 0. So, thank you for your time. Any questions? I'll be glad to answer.
William, thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Next, I'd like to call up Karen Greengard.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I'm the president of the Michigan Standardbred Breeders Association. The standardbreds are the horses that race pulling the little carts. Most of the things that I would have talked to you about have been covered by other people, but I just thought I'd fill in a few things. Because the real question is, do you wish to preserve Michigan's racehorse industry? I mean, do you see a value to it? And I hope that from the conversation that we've had, you can see that the racehorse industry, beyond just a gaming industry, is a major agricultural industry for the state. And horse racing is the job-rich portion of the gaming industry because it is so labor-intensive. There's a lot of things that just cannot be done by machinery. It cannot be mechanized. And some of the questions that might have been raised in your mind by some of these other presentations is, what is the source of the Ag Equine Fund? Because it's not just that this industry is coming to you and asking for you to dig into the general fund of the state to support racehorse farms. It's the money that is generated by it's tax money on wagers at the parimutuel racetracks. That's the source of the Ag Equine Fund. And when the gentleman said, we built the Pontiac Silverdome, or we helped, he didn't really mean we did it. He meant the taxes on horse racing, which furnished the Ag Department's Equine Fund. We supported a lot of things in the state, or the Ag Department elected to. And horse racing had plenty of money in those days. I mean, it was wealthy, and there was extra to go around, and premiums at the fairs, and many things. The bovine TB testing came out of that fund. At this point, we're just so desperate for funding. And you might say, well, what do you use the funds for? I mean, the horses go to the racetrack, and they race at the track, and if they win a race, they get money. So why do you need any more money than that? Because they get paid, some of the way the money in the purse pool is determined is what is wagered at the racetrack by the patrons. Part of the money that the patrons wager goes to the racetracks for putting on the races, and another percent of it goes for purses, and that's what the horses are paid from. But the young horses, the breeding stock, what I call the base of the job pyramid that horse racing generates, where you're talking about a breeding farm, you're talking about purchasing a stallion, standing a stallion at stud, breeding mares, foaling mares, vet care for these mares and foals, all the labor that goes on with the care, then raising the foals until they're yearlings, selling them at a sale such as Mr. Geyer mentioned to you. There's years, these years of waiting, they are years where there's no income potential. And the Ag Equine Fund dollars have gone for the colt racing program. That's the 2- and 3-year-old racing program, which takes place primarily at Michigan's county fairs. And there is no wagering at the county fairs at this time. It's allowed, but there's no fairs that do offer wagering. So it's just a completely unfunded thing. And that's where the Ag Equine Fund program money goes into an incentive for horse racing, if that helps you get a better grasp of the picture. And the parimutuel tracks are sort of the top of the pyramid, but at the base of the pyramid, there's all these farms and all these people and all these mares and foals that are being raised for horse racing. You may say, well, how can you even have 12 million jobs left in Michigan if you're so totally and completely broke? One reason why we have them is because we had a healthy horse industry up until 5 or 6 years ago, even though it was declining. And because of it, we raised a very high-quality horse, and we had a lot of people invest in farms in the state and still own farms. And these horses have been racing out of state. When I talk about Michigan racehorses, in particular the Michigan standardbreds, as being an important agricultural export, I'm not so much talking about selling the horses out of state. They are not really saleable to people in other states and in Canada until they're older and they're racehorses. They're over 3 years old. But they race all over the country. And at this point, we still have a certain number of people that are based in Michigan but are racing elsewhere. And I have a big standardbred breeding farm myself. I mean, it's big compared to the other ones, but it's nowhere near the size it was, and it's declining rapidly. And we stood our stallions in Ontario for the last couple of years in the hopes that we would put them where people in Michigan could use them and breed foals that they could race in Ontario, which is fairly convenient to us. And Ontario has put restrictions on Michigan people. It hasn't aimed it particularly at Michigan. It's aimed it at U.S. horse owners, but we're the place that's right across the border from them and can live on a farm in South Lyon or in New Hudson or in Milford and actually load up our horses into a trailer and just cross the bridge and race at Windsor. So even though they haven't said it's pointed at Michigan. It's pointed at Michigan. And here's the reason that they gave why. And again, these are not my figures, these are theirs. The Michigan horses were earning over 55% of the purse money at Windsor Raceway. That came to, and this was last year, that came to over $3.5 million in purse money. Somebody living in Michigan, feeding their horses in Michigan, employing help, et cetera, buying gas in Michigan, trailers, et cetera, go across the border, pay their bridge toll, win a race, bring their horse home, and get a purse check that they spend in Michigan. And the track, the Ontario Racing Commission complained about that, and they actually put a policy in to make it harder for the Michigan horses to get in. They want to have the horses based. They want trainers that are based in Ontario. Sarnia, the other border track, which is right across from Port Huron, has said that the Michigan horsemen make $1.5 million a year, though. So between these two racetracks, our people bring home over $5 million. And that's only two small, sort of second-hand racetracks in Ontario. We have people racing in Delaware, in Pennsylvania, in New York. Right now, I won't say all of them, because more and more are moving out there, but they still have farms here. One of the reasons they do is because they can't sell them. But they still have property here, and everybody would really prefer to be here. This is home. But they are just having to leave to make a living. And first they go out there and their family stays here, and then eventually they're just moving their kids and their wives out there too. And it's just, it's sad. I mean, to put it bluntly, and the industry, when we talk about 12,000 jobs, we're not bragging about that. It was 46,000. When we advertised and tried to get some racinos, the first time we tried to, we were competing with the casino in Windsor. And I remember we advertised and we had justification and research and everything for 46,000 jobs within the industry, directly and indirectly related to horse racing. And now we're barely clinging to 12,000. So if there's any way that you could see clear, and here's where it falls into your province, to at least allow the money that is raised by parimutuel taxes on wagering at the racetracks. And it's on the simulcast wagering that we're collecting tax money right now, to go for the Ag Equine Fund programs instead of being channeled into gaming control for the oversight of this industry. Because the bill that established gaming control, plus the fact that horse racing as an industry and the entire function of the Office of the Racing Commission has been moved into the gaming control umbrella. It's now part of the Gaming Control Board. And the first, let's see, right at the beginning of the bill 4849 that established the Gaming Control Board, it allows for the money that is paid into, that establishes the Gaming Control Board, which is a tax on the casino, several taxes. It allows for application and license fees described in this act, all regulatory and enforcement costs. Would you think about having the regulatory and enforcement costs of horse racing covered by the Gaming Control Board instead of the Ag Equine Fund, so that at least for the time being, the money that is wagered at the racetracks and funds the Ag Equine Fund could remain in the Ag Equine Fund for these breeders' awards and 2- and 3-year-old colt racing programs and some of the Michigan sired races at our parimutuel tracks? That is the main thing that I see that you could do, and it has to come from you. It would have to come from the legislature. I mean, with the agreement of the governor. But that is a change that has taken place in the last few years. And it's, again, it's not going to make this an industry that thrives or builds, but it could buy us some time while we consider some different approaches as an industry. Is there any questions that anyone has for me?
No, Karen, thank you very much for your testimony and your positive suggestions.
Thank you so much for
Goodbye.
having me.
Mr. E.J. Brown, would you please join us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee here today. My name is E.J. Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Association of Fairs and Exhibitions. We're the statewide association representing the 87 fairs, and we were organized back in 1885 as an association. This includes the 15 fairs in Michigan this year that had harness racing. There were 25 fairs back in 2008, and if we go back in the early 80s, we had 43 racing fairs at that time. A couple little statistics here. In 2008, of the 25 racing fairs, we had 247 overnight races that year, with $1.9 million going into the Colt Stakes. In 2009, we were down to 23 racing fairs with 181 overnight races and $793,000 going into Colt Stakes. In 2011, like I mentioned, we had 15 harness racing fairs, and I would defer to the Department of Agriculture for the number of overnight races and the dollar amount in the Colt Stakes, since they have the current dollar amount. We just finished racing on Sunday at Hillsdale County Fair down there. We can get you those numbers here shortly. The county fair is an important part of the strong tradition of horse racing in this state. County fairs provide training facilities and racing opportunities for young and inexperienced horses and drivers. Basically, the fairs are the minor leagues of harness racing and provide opportunities to develop and prepare horses for pari-mutuel competition. In many rural areas of our state, the production and training of horses is a significant portion of the local economy. It provides employment for farmers, caretakers, veterinarians, farriers, etc. In year-round markets for hay and grain, and horse interests pay taxes to local communities on breeding and training facilities. The horse racing industry has been mentioned here earlier employs over 12,000 people in the state of Michigan. We'd encourage the committee to seriously consider additional ways for horse racing in Michigan to stay viable and to allow the industry to have additional tools to compete with the casinos, as other folks have referenced here in their testimony. Fair people are unique. For the most part, they are volunteers. While a few are able to afford full-time managers, most are staffed by unpaid volunteers, including the grooming of the tracks. And fair people love what they do, putting on the fair, in this case, harness racing at local county fairs. Only a few of our local fairs receive any money from their local county or municipalities. Just because they have the word of whatever county in their name doesn't mean they receive monetary support from their county or municipality. Our fairs are mostly independent agricultural societies formed under Act 80 guidelines, and 7 fairs are organized under Act 11 county-operated fairs, and these guidelines are referenced in the horse racing law of 1995. The economic impact that county fairs and harness racing at fairs have to the local community is tremendous. Based on 2009 numbers, and there's a attachment of that on the last page of my handout of my written comments to you folks, that on 2009 numbers, the 86 fairs that year had an economic impact to the state of Michigan of $145,765,245 economic impact to the state of Michigan. Expenditures incurred by the fairs for grandstand concerts that year were not included because those dollars did not remain in the state of Michigan, because that would really throw the economic impact even more. But we took that out because that money's go out of state. Youth, families, farming, education, and recreation are what agricultural fairs are all about. Fair experiences are especially important among the young people who will soon be making decisions as to the use and conservation of our land and our water. Harness racing at county fairs and funding of the purse money that goes into the county fair circuit is a small investment to have a viable horse racing industry in Michigan and a tremendous economic impact to the local communities in Michigan's economy. And as referenced before, as Brett Boyd pointed out, at Hillsdale County Fair, they've been racing since in the 1800s. Most of the 15 fairs that's raced this year, several of them started back in the late 1860s, 1870s, and been racing ever since. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to gamble or have gaming at county fairs, but an example is up at the Mecosta County Free Fair in Big Rapids. They have an event there in addition to their harness racing. It's called Celebrity Race Night, and they invite local business people, legislators, elected officials of sorts, to come and run a celebrity race during the harness racing fair with the horse and the buggy and everything. It builds interest and enthusiasm for harness racing at that minor league level at county fairs. Hopefully, a lot of those folks take an interest in harness racing or horse racing in general and go on to build, breed, and train other horses in the state. At the same time, it helps keep the enthusiasm about the equine industry as a whole in the state of Michigan if we can show people how fun it can be, like at harness racing at county fairs, in addition to the other equine events that you see at local county fairs. Thank you, and I'll entertain any questions that the committee may have.
EJ, thank you very much, and really appreciate your written report, too. Thank you. The last person I have a card for is Shoshi Levine from Hazel Park Raceway. Good morning.
Committee and Chair for allowing me this opportunity to address what's going on in the horse racing industry from the track perspective. I'm an attorney for Hazel Park Raceway, and I've been involved with a number of its efforts over the last 5, 6, 7 years to try and stay in business, to keep both the agricultural end of the jobs in this state as well as the track end of the jobs here as well. My client, who has been in this industry for more than 40 years, would have loved to have been here to address you himself and is very sorry he could not be here in person. Tracks today face two basic types of challenges. You've heard quite a bit about the business challenges, and I believe my client would only say to an even greater degree and with even more earnestness that this is the time that the tracks stand on the precipice. Either we continue as a viable industry or we go out of business altogether. Additionally, we face regulatory challenges under a horse racing law crafted in 1995 that does not reflect the way the industry operates today. In the 70s, the state lotteries around the country sprung up as the main competitor to the tracks. Yes. That was followed by a wave of new casinos and, in addition, online gaming. In 1993, Rhode Island and West Virginia decided to address the problem with the competition with their parimutuel racetracks by allowing the tracks to offer new products, primarily video lottery terminals. They tended to be a partnership between the state lotteries and the tracks. Today, West Virginia tracks generate about $500 million a year, and Pennsylvania generates more than $1 billion. In 1995, when the horse racing law was amended, and it's in our current version, Michigan adopted simulcast horse racing, but missed out on the opportunity to expand the parimutuel offerings at the racetracks that had been adopted in other states. Today, most states allow some other form of gaming at their parimutuel tracks. Michigan attempted to authorize video lottery terminals in 2004. In return for killing the bill, and we say this respectfully, the casinos offered the state an additional 6% wagering tax in Section 12 of the Michigan Gaming Control and Revenue Act. The 6% tax, however, was phased out when the casinos built their permanent facilities. Today, all 3 Detroit casinos have permanent facilities and no longer have to pay the additional 6% tax. I believe Mr. Boyd talked quite passionately about the $311 million generated last year by casinos. No longer funding the Ag Equine Fund and missing out on an opportunity to pay more to the state to support other state programs that exist. Today, we have casinos with permanent facilities, no more 6% tax. We also have a growing casino competition base. This affects the tracks because the tracks are the point in time where the wagerers get to see the agricultural products on display. That's the point in time where the wagers occur and where the money gets directed both to the horsemen, to the track operators, and into the Ag Equine Fund. Today, we've heard, I think, a number of people speak passionately about the ag jobs that are leaving the state. Although the tracks represent the gaming side of this industry, it concerns them as well, because without quality horses to race in the state, we have an inability to attract people to our tracks to wager. It becomes sort of a death spiral, if you will, where poor horses, and I don't mean to suggest we have poor horses, but the prospect of poor horses and a lower number of racing dates, it only contributes to the problem of decreasing revenue to the Ag Equine Fund, fewer jobs in the state, and tracks that may go out of business. And I do mean that the tracks go out of business. In 1995, we had 8 tracks. Today, we have only 4. Right now, we also have an additional source of competition, and that's a loosely regulated charitable gaming industry under the Bureau of State Lottery. As I mentioned, and I do believe that the people in this room probably have much more experience than I do in raising horses, as I've probably only visited them and can't take any of that credit. But I can talk to you about the regulatory challenges that the tracks face. The 1994 horse racing law has, in the past year alone, been unable to address any number of issues. It's based on the idea that the city of Detroit has a population of more than 900,000 people. Our last census told us we don't even have 750,000. So we have large sections of the law that no longer work whatsoever. The horse racing law does not reflect the executive order that Governor Granholm signed, transferring the responsibilities of the Office of Racing Commissioner to the Executive Director of the Gaming Control Board. There is substantial confusion regarding the Gaming Control Board's role in regulating this industry, and the answer is it has none, but the horse racing law does not reflect that today. The horse racing law requires the tracks to apply for 160 days of live racing each year. They cannot do that, but they have to do it in order to get a license. This past year, I think Hazel Park had about 62 days of live racing. The simulcast purse pool, with only 4 tracks contributing, and of those 4, 3 tracks contributing the most money, ceases to be an equitable method of funding the horsemen and the live purses for live racing at the horse race tracks. We've had questions this past year about how we regulatorily handle certified horsemen's organizations that don't have a contract with a track that's actually running live horse races. We have unknown track license holders in this state. And while we work very hard with our regulators on these industries, we feel somewhat hamstringed by the way the horse racing law is written. Today, the tracks want to do what every other type of business does when it faces competition. They want to adapt and change, and they want to have a business environment and a regulatory environment in which they can do that. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Shoshi, thank you very much for giving us a new side and a new look at this. We appreciate it from Hazel Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other testimony today? Again, I'd like to thank all of you for coming down, especially for your testimony to enlighten all of us. We're the first ones to say we're all newbies and we're learning every day, but we're learning thanks to your input. Please continue to keep it up, and we too will carry your message. Meeting stands adjourned.